Welcome back to another episode of Blueprint to Ultra, hosted by me, Steve Epifano, and Jeff Winchester. They say that you can have too much of a good thing, but we disagree. We can never talk about running enough. That's why we started this podcast, because our families were pretty much bored with it. Each episode, we dive into the mindset, the methods, and the madness that make up this sport. Our goal is to give you tools, stories, and inspiration to help shape your own Blueprint to Ultra. Since early 2024, our next guest has been on the starting line of over 20 races, and that's just what's listed on Ultra Sign Up. In March 2025 alone, she ran some pretty big races, all about a week apart from each other. But her story isn't just about finish lines, it's about transformation. From struggling with an unhealthy view of cardio, to discovering ultra running, to balancing life as a single mom with two kids, her journey is powerful and personal. She's proof that the ultra journey isn't about just miles, it's about meaning. Please welcome Katie Jenkins to the show.
Hi.
Hi, Katie. Welcome. We're so glad to have you join us.
Hi, thank you so much for
Super
having me
excited to
on.
have you here.
Such an honor. Oh my gosh. Wow. You made me sound so much cooler than I actually am. Love the intro. It was great.
Now, actions speak louder than the words.
That's fantastic. Well, Katie, prior to the show, we sent obviously you a series of questions. We sent it to all of our guests to kind of get just some background information. And you talked a little bit about how you got into running and everything. But the thing that stood out to us, and we kind of want to jump in your story here, is that, and Steve mentioned it in the intro, is that you have this you had a unhealthy view of cardio. Mm-hmm. That's just an interesting statement, because most people think about working out and exercising as being cardio being healthy. And so how did you come up to the idea that cardio was unhealthy early on in your journey?
Okay, so before I ever started running, basically, during my teenage years, I developed a very severe eating disorder that I struggled with over 10 years. And the unhealthy relationship with cardio was I would use cardio exercise as basically a part of a way of purging, essentially. It was all there. It wasn't for joy. It was all a purpose of burning calories. And it was like an unhealthy relationship with food. And when getting back into working out in recovery, I was scared to death to do cardio, honestly, because I would spend 3, 4, 5 hours doing cardio in a gym. So when I got back into fitness in recovery, it was almost strictly strength training, I did my mandatory 20-minute elliptical per week, but I was kind of scared to go beyond that because I thought maybe I'd fall back into old habits, or I didn't know, and I didn't want to kind of test the waters with that. So it kind of got masked as, oh, I hate cardio and I just want to lift heavy things. And so I did that for a while. But yeah, the unhealthy relationship with cardio was during my teenage years when I was struggling with the very severe eating disorder. So yeah, it too much of anything can be unhealthy, really. But
well, I mean, we're ultra runners, which has also got its own nuance of too much of anything, a lot of people would say. But it's interesting to me because you think in terms of individuals who have an eating disorder and it's food related. And then yet there's this pressure that obviously you were applying with cardio also to kind of keep your weight down or your appearance to look a certain way. So how do you bridge this? Like if we know that running is cardio centric, like how do you fall in love with running when it was such an emotionally negative trigger?
So I think in 2019, it's pre-pandemic, but I got a Peloton bike, and that was my introduction back into cardio. And I got really into it, and I discovered power zone training, and it was like a systematic training program, and I had an FTP, and I just got really deep into that because I tend to kind of live in those extremes. I mean, as most of us probably do. And that was kind of my reintroduction back into cardio. Like, oh my gosh, wow, I can do this in a healthy way. And I'm not going down that slippery slope. I'm not going back into disordered behavior. And it may be a little extreme, but I was also fueling properly and using it as a form of exercise and moving my body because I could, and it was joyful. And well, not FTP test, but my whole mindset had shifted. And being that I was so many years into recovery, I kind of felt comfortable doing the cardio, and it just became. And then I got into running through the Peloton bike, because there was a group of women who, it was, I think it was around 2020 when everyone started staying home. And so we were doing all these challenges, and I made virtual friends on the Peloton bike, and they're like, we're all going to do a 5K. I was like, oh, I can't run. I was like, no, wait, what? And they're like, no, we're going to do a virtual 5K together. Just go outside and run. So I did. And I think I had like a pair of Adidas sneakers. Like, it was ridiculous. And I went around my neighborhood and I ran like 3 miles and I got shin splints. And I was like, oh my gosh, I ran 3 miles. Like, and so that's kind of how I got into running. And I trained, I guess, for the 5K. We did the 5K. And then it just kind of escalated from there.
So from a 5K to a bunch of ultras. So how did you hear about ultra running?
Oh,
how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I like to do my research, and once I get interested in something, I get really interested, and I love to read. And it was around that time, and it's everyone's staying home time, and I was running, doing the 5Ks, still on the Peloton bike, and I think I found a book on Amazon by an ultrarunner, and it wasn't Born to Run, but it was actually Broken Open by David Clark, and I read it, and first of all, it blew my mind that he was going on like 5-hour training runs. I'm like, who does that? And then it was also blowing my mind that he was running like 100-milers, and I was like, wow. And it was so interesting because I identified with his thoughts, his feelings, and throughout the whole book. And I think I read it in like a day or two. I don't know. It was really fast. And I remember thinking that, oh my gosh, maybe when the kids get older, or if I get divorced or something, time frees up. I was like, I think I'm crazy enough to be one of these people. Physically, I had no idea how I was going to do it, and that kind of like planted the seed. I was like, oh my gosh, like that is so cool. I think, but it was still the time I was running 5Ks at that point. How I was going to get there, I don't know. Like I ran a bunch of 5Ks, and then I don't think I ever ran a 10K race, honestly. And then I did some half marathons, and then I was terrified to do a marathon. Like I was like, I can't run 26.2 miles. Who can do that? And so I ran a bunch of halves, and life got like super lifey in like 2021, from like 2021 to 2024. It was just like a series of these life altering events that it was a lot. And it was in that time where I was searching I had support. I'm in a 12-step recovery for alcohol as well. So, and I've been sober quite a few years, but I was having difficulty dealing with a lot of emotions and coping. And I started running more. And there was one day where I was so in my head, and it just wouldn't stop. And I was like, I just got to go for a run. Where that thought came from, I don't know. Like I had not thought of running as any sort of like meditative and I was like, I just got to go run. And that day, I think I ran like the furthest distance I had run at that point. And it felt like I had run for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'd run like 10 miles at that point. I was like, oh, I think that was before I ever ran a half marathon, I think. And then I did a half. Yeah. So obviously I had to, but my timeline gets a little iffy. But so I was like, oh my gosh. And then that's when kind of I realized that like running can be meditative, and it became a moving meditation. And being in a 12-step recovery, they tell you to meditate. And so I was never good at the sitting still meditating. I'm like, I'm not doing this right. I don't know how this works, type of thing. But then I discovered moving meditation, and that was running, and that's what it became for me. And then I started setting goals. So I ran a half marathon, and then life super lifey. And then I decided I was going to run a marathon, which scared me to death. And of course, before I ran a half marathon, that scared me to death. And so I trained, and I did everything wrong. Absolutely everything wrong in training. I did everything wrong on race day. And in training, I had never, because I thought, I was like, well, I have to run 20 miles in training, in marathon training, because that's what you do, right? You go on a 20-mile training run. I couldn't get past 18 miles. I couldn't. And I was like, how am I ever going to run a marathon? I can't run a marathon. And so I went to the marathon, and everything went wrong. And, oh, sorry, if I back up a little bit. So I had run a few halves, right? And this was before I ever knew like you could like walk, because it was road racing, right? So I'm like, and I had run, it was like my third half or so, I don't know. And I blew up so bad in mile 12. Like I started walking in mile 12, mile 12, mile 12. And I beat myself up so bad over it. I was like, who starts walking in mile 12 in a half marathon? Well, I ended up finishing. And so to prove that I could run 13.1 miles straight through, I signed up for the marathon. That's why. And life was also super lucky. So, which is really funny because in the marathon, I blew up at mile 11. I didn't,
That's pretty early.
yeah, I went out way too fast. Anyway, conditions were bad that day, and I went out way too fast, and I did everything wrong. I ended up finishing. Of course, I had this ridiculous time goal that I didn't meet because I was in the whole road racing. Like, what do? You do things fast and you get faster. And I found the faster I go, the less enjoyable it is. I love party pace, but in the marathon, it was, once I found some other people struggling too, and we all kind of struggle busted together the rest of the way, which is awesome. And, but once we got to the 20-mile marker, I teared up. I was like, this is the furthest I've ever gone. I couldn't do this in training. And like, that was the big moment in the marathon for me. Not even, I mean, I was happy when I finished, but the fact that I got to 20 miles and then I finished, and then I ran another 6.2, but I walked a bunch too. But you know, I never thought I'd be able to finish the marathon, and I did. So I kind of knew after that, like I was going to run ultras. And so I did my first trail race because at that point I hadn't done any trails, none. And I did my first trail race. It wasn't an ultra, but it was a heavy half, and it was so fun. And yeah, it was so great. And I had a ridiculous time goal that I did not meet as well. But I finished it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much more fun. So after that, that marathon was in March of 2024. I did the trail race in April of 2024. And then I signed up for my first 50K in July 2024.
So, well, let me interrupt you there. So that's what we noticed. Like in May, you began this flurry of just May of 2024, a flurry of ultras and everything. But before we jump there, to kind of put a bow, wrap it up, and kind of put it all together here. I mean, you touched on a few things. You touched on the fact that you struggled with the eating disorder for a long time. You struggled with cardio being an unhealthy thing. You are in recovery for alcoholism as well. And you said life got super lifey. It's just, you mentioned it in offhanded ways in a couple of different times and stuff. And so you can pick up that vibe and things. And yet, through all this, you've been in recovery and you felt like you were still searching for something, and running comes along, and it feels like running has given you a different outlet, if you will. So how has running provided you a space to kind of, I'm going to say it this way, a space to be comfortable in your own skin?
Yeah, no, that's a really perfect question and great way to describe it. It became a moving meditation for me. It allowed me to kind of, during that whole time period and beginning of 2021, I felt like I'd lost myself. I was searching. I didn't really know who I was. I was coming out of an unhealthy marriage, and my mom was diagnosed with ALS. So I kind of jumped in and became one of her caregivers as well. Meanwhile, still working full time, being a single mom. And I'm like, who am I though? All these things. And I kind of went on autopilot, and it became a moving meditation, and it allowed me to kind of just be me and let all the things run through my head. I'm a little type A and neurotic, and I have anxiety. And it was just a way for me to sort all the things going on. And it was for me, it was my time. It wasn't for anybody else. I'm also a special education teacher. So my life kind of revolves around being of service to people.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, especially during that time period, I was searching for who I was again. And running gave me that. And I found I was very isolated as well. I kind of threw myself out there, put myself out there, did all the things I'm so uncomfortable with, like meeting new people. I started posting more on social media. I'm not comfortable with these things. I'm not comfortable talking with you on a podcast right now, all about myself. But, and it kind of allowed me to kind of come out of my shell and kind of rediscover who I am as an individual.
I think that's what's fantastic about it, is because when you talk about lifey things, right? You talk about unhealthy marriage, you talk about your mom with ALS, you talk about like real things. And with the history of things that you've struggled with in your past, those would have been historically triggers that could have derailed you in either direction, right? And I'm not saying you are possibly going to, but that's just life. Like that is the reality of struggling with those types of things. Life can create triggers that can push you in that direction. Yet your recovery that you've been going through, as well as finding running, has allowed you to redistribute that anxiety in a healthier space. And I think that's fantastic. It is really what we tell people all the time, is that you could be doing something worse, right?
Yeah.
So join me on a long run, because this is a way that you could kind of resolve some of that tension maybe that you have. And so I personally have an addictive personality myself. I respect that a lot. And not just a personality, I've been down the different roads. And so I get it. Like I get that. And I do think running, it provides a different outlet for folks. And so I appreciate you sharing that. You have been doing a lot. Like I said, we said in May of 2024, you launched into at least 20 different races on Ultra Sign Up. That doesn't count the ones that are not on Ultra Sign Up, because I know they exist as well, or they do for most people. And so why so many? Like, why throw yourself, like, you love it, I get it. But most people, and even myself included, I'm thinking, I don't know if I've done 20 yet.
Yeah, I don't know if either. Yeah.
But I've also been doing it for a lot longer. Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
It is not a bad it's not a bad thing. But when I saw it, I was like, now when did this start? I'm like, I see 20 races. Like, when did this begin? It's like, wait, that's just like last year.
Yeah.
What is it about it?
I love it. I mean, when I commit, I'm like 150%, but it's for like race wise and race day. Like, yeah, a lot of them were training runs, especially the early ones in 2025. But every time I go to race, I meet new people, and I love meeting new people. I was scared. I was terrified to meet new people. I was terrified to meet people and talk to people. And now I love it. And I meet new people, or I see, it's guaranteed I'm either going to see friends I know, or I'm going to meet someone new. And just the whole atmosphere, and especially with our local races down here in Florida, I just love the atmosphere. I love challenging myself. I love the whole process of it. I love traveling to different places. Having such a busy schedule, I think I kind of, especially early on, I hadn't been anywhere without children. And so it's, where do we go? We go to Universal. We go to SeaWorld. And this is also a way, like, I can, one, kind of get away and see somewhere else in a different way, and see places that other people don't see necessarily if you're running or going to visit. And I don't know, I justified doing a lot of them as training runs, but I have a good time, and I don't know, I just really like doing them. I really do. Or I also have FOMO too, where it sounds like, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a race. Where friends like, oh, hey, I'm going to go do that. I'm like, I want to do that one. Let's go do that one. And there have been quite a few that have been last minute. Actually, that most of them have been like kind of last minute, impulsive, like, I'm trained enough for it. And I just kind of go into them with no expectations, which honestly turn out to be some of the best races. Like, there was one that it was a last minute. My friend and I put our names on the wait list, not thinking we'd actually get in. And we got in. And it was honestly one of the best races I've ever had. It was a really good day for me, and probably one of the most memorable. So why so many? I just,
Oh, yeah.
I really do. I love the whole atmosphere. I love racing. I don't go to win. I just go to do my best. And
Mhm.
and it's a way to, a lot of my friends are in the ultra community now. So I don't, it's a way to see friends that I wouldn't normally see who live on the other coast and it just kind of became what I do.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So we were because we had it that we were going to talk about this because you mentioned that also in your email that you were terrified of putting yourself out there and meeting people. Like that got our attention, and so we wanted to talk about that. And so on that same topic, you know, we all believe that the ultra running community is very welcoming and it's a great place to be. But so, what advice would you give to somebody that was in your shoes, that was terrified about going to their first race or trying to maybe get into a group, even if it's on social media, people who interact? Like we talked before the show, we've been involved in podcasting for a while, but we feel like we're very approachable. Yet somebody who doesn't know us may be terrified to approach us with a question or whatever like this. So, what advice would you give to somebody about kind of doing that?
Just
It's usually my face makes me unapproachable. That's usually what it is.
no,
It's the beard.
no,
My unhoused aesthetic.
no. You got a sweet beard. Yeah, just I would tell them just do it. Just do it. Like what's the worst that can happen? Before I ever did a race, I researched. I started listening to podcasts, and I'm one of those people who I'm like, okay, well, I have to know everything I possibly can. And I was always a solo runner. I was terrified to go to like a run club or a run group, and I still honestly have never been to one. But and part of that reason was just because I was terrified of people. But I would say just go do it. Just sign up for the race. Go meet somebody. Somebody's going to say hi to you. If nobody says hi to you, say hi to somebody. And it's scary. It was terrifying. My first race, I was terrified. And then once you start running though, and you start talking to people on course, and you share like your whole life story, and they share theirs too, and it's like, okay, cool. But you might not talk to them again. You might see them. You might become best friends with them. You might become social media friends with them. But you have those memories, and so there's really no other. But like, just don't listen to whatever's going on in your head, and just do it, because the ultra community is so welcoming. And we all we're like-minded people for the most part, and so yeah, I mean, I love our community so much.
I think that's true. I think we find that we stay connected with it, if you will, because of the like-mindedness and everything too. Is that what you find is why you keep staying with it? Like, is it through social media and all that kind of stuff that you kind of keep connected with folks?
Oh, absolutely. Social media, going to races, and just you start seeing the same people, and you become friends, or you see them on social media, you start following them. I've made a lot of internet friends whereas before I don't talk to strangers on the internet. But
You don't feel like strangers anymore when you've seen them on Instagram over and over again.
Exactly. So
I always have to look up on the app real quick. I'm like, oh, what the heck's their real name? When I meet somebody at the race, I'm like, oh man, all I know them is by their Instagram handle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's crazy though, Stevie. Think about that, and I'm completely on a tangent now because I do the same thing. Is like we follow all these people on social media that do ultra running because we're like our own solo birds where we live. Most of us are, and so we don't have that kind of connectivity. It's not like we have a run club of ultra runners like in my neighborhood. But you see people who do 5Ks, 10Ks, and all that stuff. They have races in your local towns and stuff. But people aren't really, and I apologize for those who listen who do this. I'm not following all the 5K runners. Like I'm just not like, I don't have that same kind of connection. It's like I'm connected to those who are running ultras and stuff. And so I tend to see them on social media. And because there's only so many ultra races, right? I see them at the races, and then I am like further connected to them. And Katie, like we talked briefly, like I passed by you were crewing a friend of yours when I was doing the long haul 100. Like, oh, there's Katie, and she's like, hey Jeff, and that was our meeting in real life, right? And yet we talked and had known one another a little bit more through social media. And you're like, I'll be at long haul, and that's how we knew it was going to happen. But I think social media is like the fabric that kind of holds the ultra running community together in a weird kind of way.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of pros to social media. I mean, there are cons too,
It's
but
one of the good
yeah,
things that comes out of social
yeah,
media.
yeah.
One of the few.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah. So we said you have done 20 races. And like I mentioned, you connected to the ultra running community. When we looked at it, and I think you even put this on your email, there's always been this progression of a little bit further, a little
Mhm.
bit further, a little bit further. And you have done a 100-mile race. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. But with this progressive plan that you have, do you see yourself now going up to the 200 level?
That's the plan. Yes.
Do you have one
Nice.
targeted? Because Cocodona is starting this weekend, and most people are going to be tuning into YouTube to
Yeah.
watch.
You could
Well,
probably jump in.
yeah. Well, I'm going to be watching for sure, but yeah, no, I don't have a specific one targeted yet, but yeah, that's kind of my mentality of how far can I actually go? And as I mentioned before, I'm not very fast, so getting faster was not
Mhm.
fun. I mean, yes, going farther becomes painful, but I find so much more joy in it. But I've gone up that distance ladder where it's every next distance was, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, that's impossible. I
Mhm.
can't do that. And that's why I kind of felt like I had to do the distance ladder almost because it was always the next big scary goal. Like I did the marathon. Okay, the next was a 50K. I was like, oh, I can't do that. And I just didn't think I could do these things. I didn't even consider myself a real runner. I would never dare say
Mhm.
that to anybody else, but for me, I was like, oh, but I'm not a real runner. Like, and I had so much doubt. So yeah, no, I definitely see myself going further than 100
Mhm.
miles, and 200 miles is not out of the question anymore because I know those big, scary, impossible goals. If I train and mostly I'm stubborn and stupid, that they're not impossible.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do see further distances in my future.
Do
So
you,
what is it? Go ahead, Steve.
I was gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
yeah. So my the owner of Fleet Feet Laguna Niguel, where I work, Carrie, she asked me a question, and I still don't know if I have a good answer for it. Well, she asked two actually, like why, like what drives me to go further and further. So I'm probably gonna ask you the same thing. What drives you to go further and further? And is there an end? Like if there's a because the Arizona Monster just happened. That's a 300-mile race. I've already done 250. That's a possibility. So it's like if there's a 400 out there, would you sign up for it? So I didn't have a good answer for that. Like it used to be is because they told me I couldn't, but now I feel like I've gone past that. And now it's just like, I don't know why I want to go further than that. And then, so I actually don't know what it is that's driving me to go further or if there is an end. I don't know if somebody puts a 400 miler on there, that might be on the radar. I don't know. So is there something that's driving you to look further and further?
That's a really good question. It's I think it's going back to the thought that I couldn't do the things that I couldn't run 100 miles. I couldn't run a 50K. And I proved myself mostly wrong every time because there are other people that are like, yeah, I'm sure you could do it. Why you want to do it, I don't know, but I'm sure you can. But it was that self-doubt, and it was me putting limits on what I believed I could do. And it's still so surreal that like I've done some of these things. Like I can't believe it some days. So I kind of want to see if I thought my limit was there and I went past it and I did it. Where is my limit? And
Mm-hmm.
can I go past it? Because I'm now a firm believer that our bodies can do so much more than what our minds think we can do. So is there a limit? I don't know. What could I do a 400 miler or something for that? Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd probably want to go up that distance ladder first. But I think it's just testing my own limits. And coming from I've had so much self doubt, and I'm trying to change that, and I have, and running has been a great factor, or one of the biggest factors in one, rediscovering myself, and two, kind of building my confidence in that I can do so much more than I think I can. I'm much tougher and resilient and all the things that other people might tell you you are, but I didn't believe it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does. Yeah. And then, I mean, I think that's what we're all looking for too.
It's just like, how
Still,
far?
we may
How
even all
far?
be looking for the why we're still doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a journey of self-discovery too when you're out there. And sure, we run with people, and we have pacers and we have crew, and but there are times when we're out there by ourselves, and that's, you know, and those are some of the most memorable moments for me, just being out in nature with myself, with talking to the trees, you know, and I was at peace. And that was the first time in a long time I felt peace and gratitude. I mean, I try to live a life filled with gratitude, but it was, I just don't, I don't, it was an amazing experience.
So, and Steve, I was going to ask a very similar question. So I'm actually glad that you did. So I'm going to follow it a little bit differently then. So with every distance that you've gone further, and again, the limit, we're still trying to figure out like where you're going to go. But along this journey, what have you proven to yourself about yourself?
Okay. So I found that I'm so much stronger than I ever thought I was or gave myself credit for, resilient, and which, granted, I've heard, especially for the past few years, you know, when things get hard, but I never thought I was dealt or coped with anything the right way, but I never, I guess I minimized. I minimized what I thought I was capable of. I minimized my ability to handle things. I minimized a lot about myself. I think people call it imposter syndrome. I think I kind of stumbled through that, like in my career, in all aspects of my life, where I'm just like, wow, I don't really know what I'm doing. And everybody else seems like they do. When in reality, I don't think any of us do. Honestly. But, and I kind of live by, oh, I'll just kind of fake it till I make it. But then I never felt like I made it, if that makes any sense. Through running, it's, there's some days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I ran 100 miles. And like, that is so cool. But, you know, I'm just like, well, yeah, I did, because I trained and I feel properly, and I rested, and I did the things I needed to do. I signed up for too many races. But still, it was okay. It turned out okay, you know. But I think it's allowed me to finally give myself some credit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me too, for a lot of runners too, that's what's given them credit. But then if you look back at everything that they've been through, kind of like yourself, where you've passed through like an eating disorder, you're on recovery for alcohol addiction, like those things alone should have given you that you're on the other side of that. But then you only got that, I guess, validation or whatever, that through running, which is a example of like a lot of runners, I feel.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. I guess I always considered those things like those were self-imposed issues that I get. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, I'm only doing what I should have been doing all along, kind of thing. Where getting sober and getting into recovery for an eating disorder, it's like, well, okay, normal people were doing normal things all along, so I'm just doing, but I have to catch up now. You know? So why should I get credit for that? And not to say I'm very proud being sober and in recovery. I am in a 12-step program, but I break my anonymity all the time if it could help somebody. I'm a firm believer in sharing my experience, strength, and hope, because nobody has to go through the things that I did or I went through in order to get sober and to recover, and that there is hope, because there was a time where I didn't think I was going to survive. And I almost didn't at 23 years old. So it serves a purpose. And, but on the same note, it's like, well, after so many years, kind of like, well, it kind of fades into the background and things happen. And I was kind of searching again for something.
It's true. It's true. It does. It's recovery is like we're just normalizing ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're like, that doesn't feel very special. But running 100 miles, you pretty much stand apart.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. I get it. All right. So, like I said, this past March of 2025, we thought the full year was insane, but March in and of itself, we figured let's at least highlight that, because it's one thing for us to tell our listeners that you've done all these races. It's another thing to kind of actually tell them what you did. And so we figured we'd pick March. Now, the funny thing about this is we picked March initially, and we were reviewing it, and we realized, oh, there are some races that were taking place in February. There's some in April. Like, what we're going to do is we're literally just highlighting March, even though it's in the middle of a sandwich. And so, but the insanity is like this, just for those who are trying to keep score now, but listeners don't. So let me tell them. On March 8th, you ran the Florida Death Race, which is a 74-ish mile race. That is, by the way, it's also directed by the Run Bum race director who does the Georgia Death Race. And so even though it doesn't have the level of elevation that GDR has, it's the same sort of distance. And you also carry a 1 pound spike to symbolize the death race itself. And so in that regard, it's a similar race. It is 74 miles, March 8th. On March 15th, the following week, you decided you were going to run the Two Prairies Ultra 50K. You also finished that race. And then 1 week after that, on March 22nd, you did your first 100-mile race, which, by the way, most people who are signing up for their first 100 aren't trying to do 2 ultras the 2 weeks beforehand. But beside the point, Miss Katie did the Hungryland 100 on March 22nd. So our question that we had for you is, are you insane?
Probably. So the Florida Death Race was the last minute impulsive race.
That makes a little bit of sense, but nonsense. But keep going.
So yeah, it was a busy month for sure.
Say so.
February was also a little busy as well.
It was.
Most of them were planned training runs, and my friends were the race directors, and I really wanted to go do them. So I was like, oh, I'll just use them as training runs. And so I did that, except there was a backyard that I impulsively signed up for at the beginning of February because I wanted to. But besides that, so yeah, March was a little busy. So I did the Florida Death Race. I went in with zero expectations. I was ready to even drop and DNF if I had to, because the 100-mile was my big scary goal that I didn't think I could actually finish 100 miles. So yeah, went into the Florida Death Race kind of with that mindset. I kind of ran off 2 hours of sleep and a few Celsius energy drinks, which I don't drink in real life, but I do in race life. So my friend ended up not finishing the race, and I felt great. So I was ready to go though. I was like, okay, well, we can just go. And I was like, but I feel good. So I'm just going to run till the wheels fall off, basically, figuring it would be around like mile 40, maybe the 100K mark. Cause before that I had only run like 100. I had run 100K. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just like drop dead at the 100K mark or something. I don't know. Well, I had no low points in that race. Zero low points in that race. I was having so much fun. It's in like Northwest Florida, and I live in like Southeast Florida. So we run on like sugar sand dunes and stuff. And they had like woods and trees and ravines and stuff. And it was fun. And I tend to gravitate towards like the quote unquote difficult. All races are difficult, but like the quote unquote challenging ones. And I was just having a great time. I was doing my gratitude list, my max is 5, talking to the trees. And I was just having a great time. The wind kind of blew once, and I was like, oh my gosh, my mom is here. And it was zero low points. It started getting a little tiring. My light died, so it was getting dark out, but I was at like the mile 66 aid station by that point, and there was no way I wasn't going to finish, but there was really no low points. So that was the impulsive race that I was ready to drop, and that was a training run. It was honestly so much fun and so enjoyable. I really loved it. The next weekend, was it the next week?
Yeah, it was the next weekend.
Yeah, it was next weekend.
It was the actual next weekend.
Oh, oops.
Yes.
Oops. So that my friend was the race director, and I really wanted to do that race, so I did. And it was really hot. It was one of our really first really hot days, and I did that race because after I knew a lot of the people doing it, and it was a smaller race, and after everyone hangs out till everybody finishes, and they call it the hang, where you just get to hang out and talk, and I just I loved it, and it was really fun. And that I struggled in that race, so honestly, it was struggle bus, but I finished it, so that was good. And then Hungryland was my 100-mile. That was my big scary one, and I went into it terrified.
Let me interrupt for a second,
Yeah,
because we do want to talk. That's actually we want to hit the Hungryland and dig into that a little bit. But before we do, how do you recover? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's really what is. If you're listening to this story, you're thinking, I don't know how like she physically functioned to go from one race to the next. She just mentioned she even did a backyard and some other things in February, but you busted out a 74-mile race, feeling good or not. Like they're still, and you said you made it to dark. So it tells me you probably spent, I think I actually have the time. It was
18:45,
18
hours.
hours on your feet. So it's a significant effort, and there's going to be some sort of compounding fatigue that most people experience. Like, how do you recover? What does training look like between all these weeks?
Okay, so during that time period, it was recovery.
Okay.
All week. And I kind of realized what I did, like going into it, like by Florida Death Race, I was like, oh dear God, what did I do? So between those races, March, there was very little. There was no running. There was zero running. I do cross train. I'm still very big on strength training. Training is super important, and I still use my Peloton bike too. So, but between those races, especially in March, there was a lot of rest. There was very little exercise, maybe some strength and conditioning, mobility work, but there really wasn't much cardio going on, because I was aware that the two prairies race, I was not recovered. I wasn't. I mean, it was hot, yeah, and I can use that as an excuse, but by halfway point, I was like, I am not recovered enough for this. But again, I'm stubborn, so I finished the race. But yeah, in between those races, there was fueling, rest, sleep, big one. I bought recovery boots, and I thought those would be magic. They're not magic. They're great. They're not magic, but I love them. But yeah, no, especially in March, I knew enough to not run in between. And I was really worried actually going into Hungryland that I had screwed it up by doing too much. So, there was that anxiety going into it as well. I do not recommend doing it. Please don't do that. Yeah, it was. I don't make the best decisions when it comes to racing. I mean, I just don't.
So I know you said you had like anxiety going into it, but doing those two back to back, did it give you any sense of confidence going into Hungryland?
I think it might have to an extent, but I was so focused on, I think I did too much and I screwed it up, that I'm not going to be able to do it, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, I several people asked, they're like, oh yeah, you should feel like Hungryland, it's going to be like easy peasy, right? I'm like, no, what do you mean? No.
I'll be very transparent. If you were my athlete that I was coaching, I would have been terrified when you told me, hey, I've decided I was going to do this race and this race. Do you think that's okay? I'm like, panic. But on the flip side of that, what I've also learned is that runners know themselves better than coaches do. And ultimately, you know what you can do. And if you blew up, you did what you wanted to do. Like you did try it. And that's when I'm always like, hey, you know what? Go for it. If you really want to do it now, would I do it? Would I recommend it? Maybe not. However, if you want to, and this is fun for you, have at it. Do it all. Like do it all. And so It's impressive. It truly is impressive. Now,
Mhm.
I forgot to mention that you got second place female at the Florida Death Race.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It's
We
amazing.
don't want to forget that, right? We can't let that one go. Like, that's a big deal. Well, let's talk Hungryland. Steve, are you ready to move to Hungryland, or is there something else you want to
Yeah,
talk?
absolutely. Nope,
So
that
the
was it.
Hungryland 100 then takes place at the Hungryland Slough. Is that how you say that? Slough?
Slow.
Slow? It's Slough.
Oh,
I'm going to call it the Hungryland Slough. So for those who know in that area, please correct me, but it's the Hungryland Slough natural area. It's in West Palm Beach and has 14.3-mile loops. It is run on trails, fire roads, and is pancake flat.
yeah, it is flat.
You did get second place female in this. Also, you finished it in 29 hours and 44 minutes. 12th place overall. Massive, small, who knows what size field is, doesn't
Yeah,
matter, but that's what
doesn't
you
matter.
got. And we're stoked because you did that and you finished a 100-mile race. So I guess for us, just to kind of get into it, can you tell us a little bit about the experience? Like, how did it go? Like, you started this race and you had 14 3-mile loops. You're terrified, even though you just did the Florida Death Race and you've got your first 100-mile race in front of you. Like, how did the race go?
Okay, well, again, I was terrified going into it, but I was excited too, and I was like, okay, let's do this. This is literally what I've been training for, and I had this vision. I just thought, I was like, oh, when I started running ultras, I was like, it would be really cool if I like ran my first 100-miler like almost exactly a year after I ran my first marathon, which is kind of, it was the same month a year later. So I was like, oh, that would be really cool. Like, I don't know why I thought it would, but I thought it would. So
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I was like, okay, well, this is what I've been training for. Did I probably do too much before it? Yes. So many of my races, I don't have crew. I don't have pacers. Did have crew, and I had a pacer too, and they saved me. They saved me 100%. I've always seen the benefit of crew and pacers. I was like, well, no, let me try to do it myself. I love crewing and pacing other people, but very thankful I have them. So going into it, again, it's a loop course, and so I think it's like 7 loops is 100 miles, and it's local-ish to me, so I knew a lot of the people running. So it was a very good vibe starting off. Was I terrified? Yes. First loop went great. It was nice and cool out. The weather was great. Hungryland is flat, however, it is fully exposed. Fully exposed. There's no shade, and the footing gets uneven, but that's kind of where, being that it was like a cool day starting off. We're in South Florida, so it gets, no matter what time of year, the sun's going to come out, and if you're in a fully exposed area, you're going to start feeling it. Well, that day was a little tricky because it was so cool out. I started out in long sleeves because it was cold. and so the first few loops, loop 1 went great, and I was like, okay, this is great, this is fantastic. Loop 2 went great. I was like, it's great, yeah. And then loop 3 happened, and to this day I will never get over loop 3. It was I had some strong words for loop 3. The sun had started to come out. I was still wearing long sleeves for some reason. I don't know. I'd started the loop anyway, but it was basically a lot of people started struggling in this loop. And this race is actually, it's a fixed time race. So it's a 33-hour race rather than most people. It used to be 100 miles. So most people just go to do 100 miles. I think one person this year did more, but that was my mindset. Okay, I have 33 hours to do 100 miles. And then there are other cool aspects to the race that as long as you finish a loop, you can be ranked with the other people that finish the same amount of loops. So really there's no way to DNF unless you don't finish a loop. So I was like, that would be a great first 100 mile attempt. But then I was worried, oh, would that be too easy to drop down? Oh, okay, I'll only do 4 loops. So I had that kind of mindset. I was like, nope, doing 100 miles no matter what. So loop 3 happened. And it was awful. It was so bad. The sun had started to come out, but there was a nice breeze though. So by the time it was too late, by the time I felt the effects of the sun, it was too late. It was the first time I had ever thrown up in a race. It was the first time I cried in a race. And I proceeded to cry a lot more in that race. But yeah, all in loop 3 within like a span of like 10 minutes of each other. I got super nauseous. And I remember I wasn't at the 50K mark. I think I was at like mile 29 or something. And I was like, I can't go on like this. I can't run. Like I couldn't run. I was nauseous. I was like, how am I? And I was getting in my head, I was like, how am I going to run 70 more miles? Like, I can't do this. Oh my gosh. So I'm texting my crew, preparing my crew. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I'm like, so it's a loop. So my tent was set up. She's like, just get back to she's like, don't worry. There was an aid station midpoint. So I stopped there, and the wonderful volunteers, one gave me a back rub, iced everything, and it just wasn't. I ate some fruit, terrible choice, and it just wasn't helping at all. And so after that, I went on my way, and then I got to the road, one of the fire roads, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I just puked everywhere. I went to the side, and it just came out. And I was like, okay, well, I should feel better now. So, but at that point, I was also very depleted. So I knew I had like 5 or 6 more miles to go to get back to the tent. So I walked most of the, I got back somehow. I couldn't eat anything. I was trying, and I just couldn't. I was dehydrated. I get back there. I cried a lot. I cried a lot. Like, I'm texting my crew. I was like, I can't do this. She's like, well, you have to get back here. So I was like, somebody just come pick me up. I can't do this. So I get back to the tent, and I sit. And I was never one of those, like, I'm like, oh, gotta go. I'm at the aid station, gotta go. I'm at my tent, gotta go. I can't spend too long here. I sat, and my crew chief, she brought me back to life with the worst electrolyte and ginger ale concoction I've ever drank. It was so disgusting. It was so disgusting. And like the best turkey hummus pita thing. I bring a lot of my own food too, because I'm gluten free, because I have an autoimmune disease as well. So it was the best gluten free turkey pita I've ever eaten in my life. And I was like, okay, fantastic. Literally brought back to life. And I hadn't really experienced that before. I've heard about it, and I've heard people like, yeah, I brought back. I was like, oh, well, okay, that's cool, but I don't know. I'd probably drop before that ever happened. And I literally did not think I was going past loop 3. And then my crew chief made me sit for longer than I wanted to. And then I felt fantastic. Loop 4, I went out and did loop 4, and loops 4 through 6 were really good. I went into the night. I was having a great time. It got cooler out. I picked up, my crew chief was also my pacer, and I had other crew, so she came out with me, and those loops were fantastic. And then the last loop was not fantastic. It was the next day, and it was still cooler out. I did not want to go back out. I didn't. I was exhausted. I hadn't really run through the night before. Like, I had done night runs. I paced a friend at Long Haul, but I wasn't running all day before that. I was crewing. So, and I had paced and ran a few, like 2 loops at Long Haul through the night, but I had never run straight through. I was exhausted. I had caffeine and everything. Everything was catching up, and I just did not want to go out for the last loop. And for whatever reason, I had long sleeves on again that I did not change. And it got so hot. And, well, it was still morning when I went out, but by like mid loop, it was so hot, and it was so miserable. And I cried a lot again. And my pacer was with me. She was doing whatever she could. And there was another runner who had a pacer, and we were kind of leapfrogging, and he was having a hard time, and in like the loop before, or at one point, and then I was having a hard time. And then there was literally one point, I'm just like walking my pacer. She's playing a Peloton class, and I'm just like bawling. And I literally walked that entire last. I was terrified to run. I I probably could have, but I was afraid I was going to pass out. Like, I was so hot, I was dehydrated, I was exhausted. And going into that, I at mile 92, I just had the biggest full blown meltdown. Not like screaming and yelling. I was just bawling and walking and crying and listening to the Peloton class. And then the other runner who he found a second win. I was so happy for him. That made me start crying. I was like, and they're like, "You're doing great, Katie." I was like, "I can't do that." And then my pacer's like, "Oh, only like 8 more miles." And I knew it was not 8 more miles. I knew there was another mile. And yeah, I know we always get bonus miles, but at mile 92, when I'm having a breakdown, I did not want, I was like, "It's not just 8 more miles." So that was the last loop. And and of course I was getting in my head. I was like, I'm walking this whole, like, I'm death marching this whole last loop. Like, that's what I'm doing. And I was like, well, should I start running? I mean, we pulled out also. I was so, like, I was overheating badly, and my pacer was pouring water down and it was just a mess. But, it was also while I was in it, I was like, how am I going to do this for 14 miles? How am I going to do this for 12 more miles? How am I going to do this for 8 more miles? How am I going to? And it was just literally, as I'm asking myself how I'm doing it, I'm still putting one foot in front of the other, like, no matter what. I was bawling. I was wiping snot and tears off my face, but, I kept going. And then, and huge credit to my pacer. She kept me going, and she did whatever she could. And she knew exactly what I needed. And I'm sure I wasn't very pleasant. She's like, "What do you want to listen to next?" I'm like, "I don't care." And then coming up to the finish, the last part, my pacer's like, "Okay, you're running this." And I was like, no, I'm not. She's like, "Yes, you are. And I'm going to record it." And I'm like, okay. And I sort of shuffled, right? I don't know. But I mean, I don't know. I think another reason why we do this is, it's like, what other better feeling is there than crossing the finish line of something you didn't think you'd be able to do? And that, crossing that finish line, and the race director handed me my buckle, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I couldn't believe it. And then I proceeded to, like, throw up and get really sick. But it was great. But I've come to expect that. but yeah, I mean, it's just doing the things that, basically, the impossible. And that it was definitely a fun race. There are definitely low moments, which I've always heard, because I never had real, like, super duper low moments. I had them in Hungryland, where it was never really like, why am I doing this? It was like, I can't do this, if that makes any sense. Like, I never really questioned why I was out there. I don't know. But it was the thought of, oh my God, I can't do it. But yeah, there was definitely low moments. And I've always heard, like, the low moments are just that. They're moments, and they will pass, and they will get better. And I don't think I experienced it to the extent that I did in the 100-miler. Yeah, the Florida Death Race was great, but I literally had, like, no low moments there, which, I mean, is great. But it's also, I think I learned the most from the low moments, from the races where I feel like I did it wrong, or I failed. So yeah, there were definitely lots of low moments in that 100-miler. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat.
Going further.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, one, you don't know when it's going to happen. There probably will be a low. You don't know when it's going to happen. And then when you're in the low, that's all you're feeling. You don't feel like it's ever going to end.
Yep.
So you did good by putting your trust and your faith in your crew and your pacers to be able to do that. And then, so what was it, something that you guys talked about beforehand, like, to be able to have that trust in your pacers? Like, because I've seen some people just, like, totally disregard their crew and pacers and just say, like, that's it, I'm done. How did you how did you at least logically listen to them and just keep going?
Yeah.
Like
So
what made you drink that magic concoction, which I've never heard before, electrolytes in ginger ale. Have you, Jeff?
Nope.
it was the
It
raw
sounds pretty gross.
electrolytes in like ginger. It was so bad. It was so bad. So my crew chief and my pacer, and one of the reasons I feel like I don't have a coach, and I don't listen. I don't listen. I don't. I'm like, I probably would benefit
What
from
made you
somebody
listen?
telling me what to do, but I listen. Yeah. So my crew chief and my pacer, she's one of my dearest friends. Where we met running,
Mm.
and I trust her. She knows exactly what I need. I have crewed and paced her too, and we just have this understanding. Would I have listened to somebody else? I don't know. She basically told me she was going to be my crew. I didn't ask her. She's like, "I'm crewing you, and that's it." I said, "Okay," and I admire her so much, and she's such a beautiful person, a great runner, and all these people that I've met and all my friends that I've met, I admire so much in in our community, and so why I listened to her, because one, I completely trusted that she knew what I needed in that moment, and two, I admire her running abilities, and I'm like, well, she knows what she's talking about. So, but and we also have one of those bonds and connections, and I knew, and we did talk about it beforehand, and I told her, I said, wow, well, whatever happens, don't let me quit. Don't let me drop down. Don't let me DNF. And she's like, there's no way. She's like, there's no way. We're not going to do it. And so we had talked about those things beforehand. We had talked about, well, when do you want me to come out with you? What do you think? We talked about some of these things. And then other things that kind of happened in the moment were exactly what I needed as well. So there was that mutual trust. I'm sure I wasn't exactly very willing and pleasant. I really complained about that concoction. I mean, it worked, but I am not getting over how disgusting it was. I'm like, why did you make me drink that? But thank you, kind of thing.
Doesn't sound pleasant at all.
No, it was awful. It's terrible. But it worked. It worked. So, yeah, had it been somebody else, I might not have listened as well. But, her, I was like, yeah. And she approached it in a way like the ginger ale concoction. I know I'm not getting past that, but she told me to drink that. Other thing, she was like, okay, well, she asked me, which some people it doesn't work for, some people it does. I don't like necessarily all the time being told, like, you have to do this, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. And I was a little resistant to the electrolyte concoction. She like, do it. I was like, okay, but in all other instances, she's like, okay, well, do you want this or this? She gave me a choice. And I feel like that was very important for me as well. And there were times where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I can't even, like, I know a lot of us do, but I get real dumb when I run. Especially at night, sleep deprived, and they're like, what do you need? I was like, I don't know what I need. And then she proceeded from there, but she always asked me first. And I thought that was really important as well.
No, that's great. It's interesting because I know you had multiple lows probably through the Hungerland, but there's two that you kind of touched on. You talked about at the very end where you cried, I'll say, for the last 10 to 12 miles, right, off and on. You may have done a little bit of shuffling every now and then, but you did a bit of a death march. And I have found that low, when I've experienced that, or other people I know when they've experienced that low, that one never seems to break. It's like we just continue on to the very end. And yes, we get to the end. We see the end is happening. We know we're not going to quit at this point because we're just going to just kind of keep moving forward, even though we're not sure if we can do it. We just know that we just kind of keep moving forward because we're almost in between the last aid station and the finish, right? To some degree, it's like there is no other option other than turning around, and that's just stupid, right? And we know that intuitively. But the other low, which is a hard low that we talk about a lot, that people can go through, and then they supposedly get out and they get better and they rebound and rally, they low mood, eat food, whatever kind of things that you want to call it, right? You went through that at the end of lap 3. And the key phrase that you said tells me how much of a low. You said, I sat longer than I wanted to. And the reason it got my attention is because so many people go into a race, particularly their first 100, and they've got all kinds of plans of grandiosity of what it's going to look like, of how fast their laps are going to be, right? And they know the different benchmarks are going to be in. And I should only spend this much time in an aid station.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into this moment that drags itself out for a lot longer than we put in that 7-minute aid station break on our spreadsheet. It ends up being a 45-minute to an hour break.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know how this just happened to us, right? And so what I want to ask is, how did you agree to sit for that long? Because most people, that as that clock is ticking and they're already in the low, somehow, some way, you've got to come out of that, even though you're in the middle of this experience where you're literally at the end of the loop because you're sitting there and you could just go to your car.
Mm-hmm.
How did you maintain the patience to wait until you felt good enough to say, oh, I'm still in the game, and not get up from your chair as soon as you stayed in that low, drank a little bit of that drink, think to yourself, this is crap, and go to the race director and tell them you quit? How did you do that?
Oh man. Okay. So yeah, I mean, coming out from loop 3, yeah, I really was not sure I was going to continue. So I sat, I drank, I ate, I physically, whenever so I did get up. I got up, but I was disoriented. I knew enough to I knew that I was not ready to go back out there, but it was still in my head that I wasn't quite done yet. And plus my crew was telling me to sit. And again, I was listening to her for whatever. She's like, no, just sit. You'll be fine. And I think I was there was other people around. There were other people around. They're like, okay, you just need to sit. You'll feel okay. You're starting to feel better. Look, you're eating. You're holding this down. They're just kind of making simple observations that okay, well. And then I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel better, and this is great. And then I was like, oh, I'm ready to go. And my crew chief was like, no, you're not. Sit. And I was like, okay. Why I listened to? I don't know. I don't know. I think I was still kind of worried that maybe I was not felt like once I got up and tried to go back out there, I would just start feeling the same thing would happen again. Why I didn't go to the race director and be like, oh, I'm done. I don't know. I think it was mostly my crew, and they were so busy. Like, here, drink this, eat this. No, you're okay. And I'm sure I think I was kind of perseverating on loop 3. I was like, man, that was such a bad loop. And I kept saying F loop 3. And they're like, okay. And I would not stop talking about it. And I was kind of stuck on it. So I think that kept my mind occupied rather than go, yeah, I'm done.
Well, that's just it. So the one thing that you avoided saying the entire time was being done. Like, you didn't make the decision to be done. And that's, we've talked about it with other guests as well, is that a lot of times we pre-decide before we even get to our aid station that we're actually done. Mm-hmm. And you said when you sat there, is that deep down you kind of knew you weren't done yet, but you just didn't feel great and you hated it. You wanted to be done, but you didn't feel like you were done. And so you didn't pre-decide it. It doesn't sound like. It never was a definitive moment where you said, I'm done. Mm-hmm. I just feel like crap.
Yeah, no, it's when I was nauseous, my thought process was, I remember distinctly, how am I going to do this for 70 more miles? Mm-hmm. But just kind of in recovery, it's kind of no matter what, you don't drink no matter what. I'm going to finish this race no matter what. Now, if it's barring severe injury or not necessarily a death before DNF, but I've had one DNF technically from the backyard, which most people say doesn't really count because everybody
DNFs except for the winner.
Yeah, exactly. But technically, technically it's a DNF, so I got that out of the way. But but going into it, it's not one of those, oh, I didn't finish the race. Not necessarily a death before DNF, but I haven't yet, besides that one where I decided to either take myself out of the race. So I think it's just, I kind of had that no matter what mindset. There were moments where I'm like, how am I going to do it? But I don't think I ever said, I mean, obviously I finished, because once I decide, I think most of us, once we decide we're done, then we're done, you know? And it, I don't recall a distinct moment where I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. There were thoughts of, I can't do this, but as I'm like walking and going, it wasn't I'm done, I'm quitting.
It's the argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. But the real low points, it was like, how am I going to do this for this much longer? How am I going to get through this? How am I going to spend 6 more hours, however many more hours doing this? And that's when you're really getting in your head. You're like, I'm like 15 hours into this. I have how many more hours to go? But yeah, it's kind of that no matter what mentality. And I think I had that going in. I was scared I wouldn't be able to, but there wasn't really a distinct moment where I'm like, nope, I'm done. I can't do this.
So one of the things that when listening to this, like for me, we can talk to guests about their training, their planning, their nutrition, their hydration, the things that they've done to prepare themselves. And yet you have done strength training, you do Peloton, you do a lot of the mobility work. You did sprinkle this into the conversation. We didn't dig into it and everything. You do all those types of things, but your secret sauce, the thing that you are still struggling to give yourself credit for, is your determination, your will, your stubbornness, you like to call it. The fact that you're stronger than you may even want to give yourself credit for, that has been shaped over your entire life. Like everything you've gone through has kind of helped you excel in the tough moments. And you know this, and you may not want to agree with it personally sometimes because we don't like to accept like compliments about ourselves, but you really should. Like, it's not confident or arrogant or like anything like that. It's actually the acknowledgement of the fact that you have been shaped by your life and you're able to kind of do some incredible things because you are stronger than you've given yourself credit for decades, right? And that's just impressive to me. And I want you to know that, and you should hear that, and you should accept that and believe it or whatever. But I think everybody has experiences in their life that shape them. We don't all have to go through an eating disorder or some sort of addiction. Like, we don't all have to do those things. Some of us do, some of us don't. But we all have a life that is shaped by pros, positives, negatives, cons, whatever you want to call them. And then we can rely on those experiences to kind of get better. And so people who are listening, you don't have to have been Katie growing up. Right? You just have to be you and recognize that you also can do things that you probably didn't believe about yourself. And if you can accept that, then you can accomplish 100 miles, 200 miles, 250, 300, 400 miles like Katie and Steve are talking about doing. I don't know. Right? But you can do all those types of things because you can begin to believe in yourself. And Steve and I, we talk about this often. And it's when we were first even brainstorming about this podcast, we're like, what is it that we want to help people understand is that maybe they can do hard things if they could just believe in themselves.
Yeah.
Like, you can do all the training, you could have a coach, or you could do none of that crap. If you could just believe in yourself, you probably can accomplish some really hard things. And to me, that's what's the amazing thing about the sport that we're a part of. You can go do a 74-mile run on one week and a 50K the following weekend. You can do a 100-mile race, and you can sprinkle that with other races around it. And you can do those types of things, not because you've done all the right training, but because you have had some training, you do some work like you need to, but you've also got a good, strong core that can kind of get you through the tough moments. And you are in that in spades, like in spades.
Oh, geez.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
No, like whatever. You're killing it. So it's impressive. So I'm going to switch gears. Sorry for going on the soliloquy and rant about complementarianism or whatever you want to call it. But we do a segment we call Coach's Corner at the end of each of our episodes. And we're going to do that now. And this week, we actually have 2 questions, but they're very similar. And it's why we decided to compare them together. So for those who are listening who have no idea what I'm talking about, Coach's Corner is an opportunity where people can send in questions that they have for Steve and I and whoever is our guest for the show. And we will do our best to answer it. And our guest will do their best to answer it as well. And we just come up with an answer that's sometimes really good. Sometimes it's probably questionable. You take what you get, right? But we're going to do our best to kind of answer it for you. So in this week on Coach's Corner, the first question, and I'm trying to figure out, Steve, if I should just read them both or...
I would read them both at the same time.
All
That's
right,
probably what I would do.
All right, so question, because they're similar. The answers are going to be similar. So
Yeah, they're both pretty similar.
Yeah, question 1 is from Zach B., also known as Baylor Bunch Dad on Instagram. So if anybody's following him, you know who I'm talking about. He said, I've been debating attempting a 100-mile on Saturday followed by a marathon on Sunday. This and Katie's like, go for it. The start finish lines are about 45 minutes from each other, and the marathon starts 25 hours after the 100-mile. Would you recommend running a 23 to 24 hour 100-mile race, sleeping in the car, and jumping straight to the start line of the marathon, or attempting a faster 100-mile 20 to 21 hour range and getting more sleep before the marathon? Actually, Steve, I think we should probably try to answer that question first.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
it's going to
for
get
me.
the details are going to get complicated. So, should he do a
That's true.
100-mile race? Yeah, that starts 25 hours before a marathon that's the next day. And do we basically the question is, do we recommend doing a 23 to 24 hour 100-mile race and getting in the car and going right over 45 minutes later to start that marathon? Or should he go faster and do 20 to 21 hour range? So I'm going to go first, Steve. I can't
Yeah.
run a 100-mile race that fast. So
Yeah.
that's the start of my answer. So, Zach, if you can knock out a 20 to 21 hour 100-mile race, I'm going to say go that route. Because who cares what the marathon does? To me, it's just an impressive feat. So knock out your 100-miler and then take a nap. If you can pull it off, take a nap. And here's the deal. If you blow up and you're able to run 20 to 21 anyway, you can probably still finish in 23 to 24, get in your car and make it over to that marathon. Now, that marathon, if your 100-miler is hard, it could be an ugly marathon.
Yeah.
But you want to decide if the goal is to finish it or to race that marathon. So I would leave that to you. Steve, any thoughts or you want to go with?
I mean, I'm kind of, I guess I would say similar to you, but I would just say like anything can happen in a 100-miler. So it's really hard to plan that. I would just try to go finish that thing first and then see what happens in the marathon because, like I said, anything can happen. It's a long race.
100%.
So just do your best to get the 100-miler done first and then figure out what you're going to do with the marathon, if it's going to be a nap or not.
Anything to add to that? I'm Katie.
Yeah, no, just try to knock out the 100-mile first. I mean, hey, if you can do it, go for it. That's always my motto. And you could always party pace the marathon. So.
Party pace it. That's what I'm thinking too, right?
Yeah.
I love it. So, Zach, we hope that's helpful for you. And the reason I'm jumping to the next question is because this one is really designed almost like to a T for Katie. So the second question, similar though to yours, Zach. This one came from Tyler, who's Crimson Tyler on Instagram. He said, I have two 100-milers in November. 2 100-mile races in the month of November. Sounds like other people we know. He has the Mamba 100 in Memphis and then the Seven Trails 100 after that in Virginia the following week. He would like, this is the best part, and Tyler, I'm impressed with this next part. I want to get sub 24 at one of them. Which one should I go all out to try and get that sub 24? In other words, he's okay not getting it in one, but in one of them he would like to. I mean, I already know my answer, but Steve, would you like to go first on this one?
I guess it would. I think it's going to be along the same lines as that. I would go for the sub at the first one, or whichever one has the lowest amount of elevation. That's for sure. Because then, like you said, if you blow up, you can still finish that one, and then you can decide on the next one after that. At least it gives you an opportunity to you don't put all the pressure on the second one.
And I agree. I don't know what the elevation is like in Seven Trails. I interviewed the race director of the Mamba, and I can't remember that either, but I don't recall that being very extreme. It is a single track for Mamba, and so and it's a pretty popular race. So I don't know if there's like a traffic issue he may have on the trails if you're trying to go faster. But with a 100-mile race, there should be no issue. So, but a sub 24 is a great goal for either of these races. I would say that I would lean towards trying to do it in the first one as well, only because I don't know what that carryover fatigue is. I don't know, Tyler, what your experience is with fatigue and how that carries over to the next week. And so my tweak for this conversation for you, Katie, is obviously we make the joke about the two back-to-backs. So my tweak for you is, what advice would you give to Tyler about recovery between the two?
Mm-hmm. Don't do any running.
Boom!
Sleep, fuel, use your boots if you have them. Do mobility stretching. So many people don't stretch, but do not run. Do not run. Rest as much as possible. Yeah. And definitely try to go for the sub 24 on the first one, I guess.
I think so too.
Let's say eat too. eat a lot.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that week between two 100-mile races, it needs to be really intentional about recovery. And to be honest with you, Tyler, if you finish 200s back to back on 2 different weeks, regardless of what the time is, I know sub 24 is a huge goal for a lot of folks. That would be awesome if you get it in one of them. But if you finish both them, that's a huge win. Like that
Yeah.
is stellar.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So kudos to both of you. I look forward to hearing how Zach yours turns out. So please leave us a message. And Zach, if you get some sleep in that car, please let me know. And then Tyler, I definitely want to hear about yours as well. So that is our Coach's Corner. And thank you both for sending those in. And so again, if anybody's got questions they would like to have our opinion on, please send them in. We'd love to have them. We think they're a lot of fun to do, and our guests like them as well because they tend to somehow tie into what our topics are with our guests most of the time, and it just works out. But that's all that we have for today. Steve, any closing questions, thoughts, or concerns with Katie?
Nope, I think we covered it all.
Fantastic. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you so much. Yeah, like just being just transparent and sharing your story and just your experiences. And we think you are fantastic and a huge asset to the ultra running community. And we're so glad to have you as a part of it and the part of the family. And so for those who are listening, if you want to keep up with Katie, what's the best way they can stay connected to you?
Oh gosh, I'm on most of the socials. Instagram, my handle, what is my handle? KL Jenkins 27 on Instagram and Katie Lynn on Facebook. I'm on Instagram more though, but yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me.
And she carbs so hard on Strava.
And Strava too. My Peloton leaderboard name is I Carb So Hard. So find me on socials. Thank you guys so much for having me. It was such an honor.
Absolutely.
I've been listening to you guys since the beginning. So it was absolutely an honor and so much fun to talk with you guys today.
Well, thank you. It's our pleasure as well. Again, for those listening, if you like the show, please leave us a comment, leave us a like. Make sure you're following and subscribe. Tell a friend, a parent. Maybe they'll encourage you to do that. Yeah, tell your mom. Your mom would really like to get to know us as well. That just sounds awkward. So anyhow, thank you so much for being a part of our listening group. And if you got any questions for us, please reach out to us through Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. But again, thank you, Katie, so much for the time and your family for sacrificing the evening. Hopefully your dogs and everything that were going crazy earlier will forgive you for being away from them. But thank you. And we have enjoyed hanging out with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was so much fun.
All right. We'll see you guys. See ya. Bye now.
Bye.